think about the racing was pretty good.
Right, yeah, that one's always good.
That's always good.
That one's fun. It's the only one where there's local guys that are gonna rip,
100%.
and everybody knows that going into it. But then to see how the pecking order goes, because I just looked at the overall results for both classes today, and I was like, Connecticut, New Hampshire, Maine,
New England guys.
Yep, NESC, NESC, yep.
Yep. So for those of you listening, we're here at Southwick. It's myself, Anthony Vicencio, Michael Antonovich. Did I get you? I don't know. Did I get your name right? How do you say it?
Antonovich.
Antonovich?
But, yeah.
Oh,
but
I'm pretty close.
It's like 5 different pronunciations because even my wife doesn't say it right like half the time.
I don't even think I say my last name right.
Yeah.
It's like we picked it when we came over the border. We're like, that sounds cool. Vicencio? Yeah, I'll say it like that.
That's probably how it is for us, too.
Yeah,
like, the old family back in the old country is probably just like, oh, my God, these idiots.
Yeah.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
So, for people listening, what is it that you do currently? Because I see you doing a lot of things. You're always handling media.
Yeah.
And I've seen you doing it for a long time. But right now, what do you do?
So, we have SwapMoto Live, which is the all digital, like, offset. That's me, Don Maeda, Chase Curtis, Donnie Wilson, and Dominic Gayton are our 2 sales guys. Mm-hmm. So it's a 5-man staff, and then it's just all digital content. We did have the magazine and everything at Transworld, but it just doesn't make sense to really do print right now with the way everything is, and especially as a young company. So for me, I'm the online editor of the website, but then that also means that I'm doing photo, doing video, doing text articles, learning about the website, building newsletters, helping out with ad campaigns, running analytics, and then the general everything else that goes with it. So the travel, the expense reports, the booking, everything, kind of keeping tabs of what's going on. So just kind of a little bit of everything.
Yeah, wear a lot of hats.
But it's like, that's all I know. So that's all I would want to do. If I only had to do one thing, I see a lot of people that get to do it and it looks a lot of fun. But to have to do as many different things as I have to do in one day, which is what Don always taught me to do, it's fun to do that 11 years into my career now. Is
that something that it's more rewarding? Or like you feel, I don't want to say more accomplished, but more productive?
Well, if I remember that I'm being productive, because like even today, I was doing something and then something else was working on the computer while I was doing something on my phone. But because I didn't realize that I had one task done or this was getting done, I was still like scrambling because 2 things weren't done at once, even though I was working on 2 things at once. Yeah. So it's like a gift and a curse because I know everything is pretty broad and that when I am working on something, I'm tagging the bags on it. Like I am still doing something, but I always know there's more that's still got to get done. Yeah. So then there's that constant nag of like, hey, you didn't do this. You still got to do this. You got to catch up on this.
I hear that from just about every person in media that it's almost kind of a, I don't want to say an impossible workload, but it's you shoot for the stars. So hopefully you land somewhere behind the moon, and it's, you can't show up empty handed and you have to keep on top of as much as you can.
So, and the same thing that everybody's going to say too, it's always changing. Yeah. If you told me 6 years ago there wasn't going to be print and then we would be doing YouTube stuff and YouTube would be such a traffic driver that it is now, I'd be like, sure. The company that I used to work for didn't think that way. And so I think about the jobs that I have to do at the races every Friday and Saturday. Yeah. And I think back to what I was doing 7 years ago at Transworld. It's 2 totally different things. It's way, way more now, and it's way more time sensitive. Whereas we don't have the magazine we have to worry about, but just everything just go, go, go now.
Faster pace.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Which is good and bad because it's like the instantaneous reward, but then you lose out on the whole like product. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like you throw it together and it looks good, but it doesn't have the same polish that like a magazine article did.
Yeah. Yeah, because you're not spending not the opportunity to spend the same amount of time. Yeah. Because what were magazines? Was it month to month typically?
Yeah, month to month.
Okay.
But you would take 6 weeks to make a magazine.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah, mm-hmm. I see that a lot. That's interesting. So then when I see you at the track, what's your just take us through a day.
Well, it depends on the day.
Okay.
So Friday is more video heavy. So then that's when I interview everybody just to kind of figure out what's going on, who's doing what. I really enjoy getting to go talk to everybody. So to get to do that, film raw practice if it's a Friday media day, that's a lot of fun, and just get to see who's doing what. And then the biggest project is we have this thing called News Break. So it's a pretty quick, like 4-minute recap of like, hey, this is what's going on. So it's like a pre-race show, and then there's 20 minutes of rider interviews after that. So it can give you everything that's going to happen in the weekend, and then some one-on-ones with the guys. And then you kind of know, and it's all filmed against B-roll that I shoot on Friday. And it's like a 5 gigabyte file because it is so big. And so then to like write it, lay it out, do this, do that. That's probably the biggest task of Friday. And then Saturday is basically just watching the race, but I just watch it with my photo camera mostly. So then all my photo work for our website or the clients we shoot for gets handled on Saturday.
Gotcha. And then does that, when you have to do, so take something like Friday and you compile all that together, how late does that put you in the night? So like from the time you leave the track, if you're lucky, you get a good bite to eat and get situated.
Well, the last two haven't been the easiest. Like I was up, I think only slept like 3 hours the last 2 weekends, like last 2 Fridays, but that's kind of my fault. But okay, like during Supercross is more common because in Supercross you have, you don't have to show up to the track at like 6:30. You know, you can show up at 9 and you're still late, but it's not as bad. So on a Supercross, I'll wake up at 5 in the morning and then start working to get it finished, to then leave the hotel by 8 or 8:30 to get to the stadium by 9. And then that's if I went to sleep at like between 11 and 1 on Friday night. So like 4 or 5 hours.
A little bit of a grind. I think we all end up on that same boat, honestly.
And like you kind of have to because you fall asleep on the plane.
Yeah.
You might go 2 or 3 different time zones. Like there's a lot of little things that kick in that you just never feel like, oh, I'm going to go to bed now. You're always just kind of up. And then you know how much stuff you have to do the next day that you just have to like plan it out.
So how'd you get into all this to begin with? Like, when you were a kid, did you grow up riding or?
Yeah.
Okay.
So, how do I start this? So we've always had racing around us. Like my whole family, everybody's raced, everybody's done something.
And where are you from originally?
St. Louis, Missouri.
Okay.
So everybody's always had that. And I always wanted to be a part of it. So even when I was a little kid, I could tell you who was doing what in sprint car racing. And then when I was about 7, my dad got us a motorcycle because he didn't want to go go-kart racing because he didn't know about it. But he's like, yo, you can get a Z50. Like, this will be fun. So we got that. We moved to the area we live in now. So then we had property. So I had a little track that I could ride on. And then pretty much from the time I was 8 years old until I was 17, I rode every day. But, like, wasn't very good, but it was just enough to just, hey, you got an activity to do. You stay out of trouble. You want to do it. And then I just learned everything I could about it because I got to do it every day. So I got really into the racing side, obviously, and saw the media side. But I think like everybody else we see every weekend, I just want to go to the races every weekend. So originally I wanted to be like John Knowles. Like I wanted to be a goggle guy. Because I thought that looked fun.
He makes it look fun.
He does.
That's for
like
sure.
Knowles is the one that really did
the man.
make me want to do it in the first place because Knowles, everybody had Scott, you know, he had PC, he had all this stuff. And it's a stressful job and it's an important job, but it's not like a do or die job. And then you got to be right on the track, you got to do all this stuff. And because I have a younger brother and I race prepped all his stuff, it was just like, well, I'll just keep doing that then. It's just the same thing.
Now, did your younger brother race a bunch too?
Yeah, and like obviously better than me, but just we did it just enough to like have fun with it. It was never like a serious thing.
Gotcha.
But he's all the way into cars now. Like he broke his wrist one time, and then it was like the navicular.
Yeah.
So it still clicks. So ever since then, he's like, yeah, I'm good. Like I'm good. It's kind of junk now.
I thought I remember you telling me something about like he's into cars like big time, isn't he?
Yeah, big time. He has like.
Does he race them or is it more hobby stuff?
Well, it's kind of difficult because like the whole business that he has now is kind of wrapped around competing in drifting events. So one kind of feeds into itself. Like, all of the work he does is to go drifting, but when he goes drifting, everybody knows to go to Kyle for the work. So it just kind of feeds itself around.
It's the same as for what we would do in motorsports.
100%.
It's like
Yep.
if you were into moto and you wrench on bikes and stuff or whatever, and then you have a little local shop, but you're out there actually doing it too, and it has a big draw.
Yeah.
I think that's a big key. There's a lot of I think some of the best dealers and stuff or shops, they always do really good if either somebody that's a employee or owner or whoever, if they go and they get out and race
And see it.
It helps them because they're more aware of what's actually going down in the racing community, but also it helps with the racing community to have confidence in somebody who's actually out there doing it.
Yeah.
And it never hurts to be fast. You know, I remember when I came up, I worked at a local shop called CWS in Clovis, California, and I was really big into track days. You know, and I could get around pretty good. And our thing is we sold the hell out of tires, so I've always been a tire guy.
Yeah.
And when I started over there, the main thing was we sold Alpine Star leather road race suits. We actually became a suit center, which was a big deal, and for dealers, at least at the time it was. I think there was only a couple in California, but you had to have a bunch of suits in stock. But we would bring people in, get them fitted, order them suits, and then we take them to track days, and you go out there and you ride with them, and riding's an ego thing anyway, so if you could go pretty fast, then people pay more attention to you. And then if you do it on a specific set of tires, then they're like, well, shoot, if he could do it on that, I could probably do it on that. And then they believe in the tire, and then they go and get it. And then, so we always controlled that region with the tire market. And that's like, I always try to tell people, if you can control the tires, you can control the business in your region, you know.
Okay, so today, when you're walking up the hill out of the pits, were you pretty surprised at how many dealerships sponsor Southwick? That's a lot of dealerships for one area. You know,
I feel bad, but I didn't pay attention to that. It was so damn hot up here.
Yeah.
Like
That's true.
You New England folk are crazy. Like it never fails, dude. The weather's always a little gnarly, and it's not. It could be the most beautiful day, and it just makes a total wimp out of me because it's either super hot and humid, and it doesn't even seem that hot. Like you open the door and it's like, oh, it's beautiful, and then you get to step in or get moving a little bit. And then the sun starts hitting you, and then especially there at the track, there's not a whole lot of wind.
Yeah, it's just
it's stagnant. Yeah, and then it gets humid, and there's always like a shower the week before or the day before, and then it just that moisture comes right up when the sun comes out, and you're just chewing on air, and then next thing you know, you're going down, and I'm just glad I'm not out there riding the ding bike.
Dude, I was dripping today, just soaked. And even as I watched guys go by, and I saw how plastered their jerseys were on the back, and then you could wring them out. You could touch them and just wring them out, and you're just like...
That's the kind of stuff where it's easy to watch on TV and think like, oh, that guy's, going slow or this or that. And honestly, straight up, it looks a lot slower on TV, But when you're standing out there, like I'm getting fatigued watching some of these guys because it's so like you're in the sun, you're in the elements, and then these guys are in the sun, the elements, and then they're getting after it and have some guy panic revving next to their ear over a jump. And that's the stuff. Like, I think it's important to go to races because you get to actually feel it and experience it, and you're in the elements. It's just like if somebody drives a car through a national park, right? And then you ride a motorcycle through the national park. It's two different experiences. Yeah. You feel it versus kind of sightseeing. Yeah. And also you feel it too. Like I think back to a lot of roads, I was always a big street bike guy, and riding different roads, they always had a different feeling to me because there's some roads with great traction, and they're always clean, and it could be on the side of carved into the side of a mountain, and the way that the corners would be, you can see 3 or 4 corners ahead of you that no traffic is coming. And if you've been up and down that road once or twice in recent time, you could be fairly confident that the road's clean, and now that you know that there's no traffic, you could really give it a pretty sincere effort on the road. you know, and then there's just a certain feel to being in these different regions. And I'm from California, you know, Central California. So those areas, whenever I go through there, it has a different feel to me than if I was to have driven through there in a car.
Oh, yeah.
And something as simple as that, like if you've never ridden a motorcycle, it's an amazing feeling. Like it's worth doing if you have the stones for it, you know, and or curious, you know, go learn. And the biggest thing is learn how to properly do it safely, because it's very unforgiving. You think about how many people you know that have been in a fender bender in a car. Like everybody I know, like I think everybody knows somebody that's gone through that. And well, if you do that on a motorcycle, that's your, instead of a bumper, that's your leg or that's your arm, you know, or you get stuck under a car, and that happens all the time, you know. And so you got to go and learn to do it safe, get good gear, and it just gives you a little bit better security and confidence in knowing, like, okay, and confidence is important with anything you do, you know, and especially on the road. You got to be a little bit confident and a little bit scared at the same time, because it keeps you in check. You know, it's that good sweet spot.
So, okay, I've never really ridden like a street bike, like pure low, you know, grip the edge of the tire street bike on the road like that.
Yeah.
So how did you get into that? And then how do you build up to like, okay, I'm going to carve a little bit harder here? Because it's completely different than moto. Like, if I've been plastic up, it's whatever. But if I like went skidding at 60 miles an hour across the asphalt and like destroyed a bike, it's a big deal.
Big deal. The time that I did it, I was really dumb. And that's why I was able to learn. Okay. Honestly, I was 18 years old, 18 or 19. I would have just turned 19, and I had stopped wrestling. That's all I really knew. That was kind of my whole keep it together purpose. And I decided that it wasn't for me anymore, because I wanted to eat good food and I wanted to have a social life, because to be competitive, you can't have any of that. And I was already tired of that, you know, at the time. And it was what it was. And I always wanted a motorcycle. My parents never let me anywhere near them. And so I remember it was before Thanksgiving. Yeah, I had just turned 19, because my birthday's in October. It was before Thanksgiving, and we would have Thanksgiving at like on two different occasions because of this family and this family, that kind of thing. So my dad, he wanted to go pick up some more beer, and I went with him, and we were coming out of the market, and there was a dealership across the street, and I tell him, like, hey, you want to go look at some motorcycles? And he's like, sure. And he might have had half a bag on. I don't know why, but he was willing to do it. And we went in there, and the salesman was pretty, looking back, he was pretty stereotypical. Like, yeah, bud, this bike's all yours, you know?
Yeah, let's do it.
Yeah. And I remember there was a picture of Ben Spees was the man at the time. Him and Aaron Yates, or not Aaron Yates, Matt Mladen.
Okay.
Aaron Yates is also the man, this for the record. But during this time, the premier guys on the Makita Suzuki, it was or Yosh Suzuki was it was Matt Mladen and Ben Spees, and I had no idea what it was. You see a big old giant poster of them on the wall, and I remember the guy was just telling us, yeah, you know, if you're looking at a bike, you're going to outgrow this 600 right here, and there's a 1000. We have a 750. It's perfect. You won't get tired of it. And I'm like, yeah, I'll totally get tired of a 600. And then I'm like looking at the bike, and I'm like, well, are those 1000s up there? And he's like, yeah. And I was like, well, will this bike do that? And I pointed at the poster, and he looked at me. He was like, yeah, totally. And my dad's like, what are we doing? And so he goes and he tells my dad, hey, we have this whole deal where there's zero money down for the first 2 years and 0% financing for the first 2 years, and you just start stroking payments and blah 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 blah, and it turns into this horrible deal down the line, and it'll help your son build some credit. I'm like, Dad, I need to build credit. I'm an adult now, and I'm on my own. Like, help me out. And my dad's like, yeah, you totally need credit, and he's never been that way ever, and then he ran. Oh, I needed my dad to co-sign. I was like, I'm a grown-ass man. I can do what I want. Dad, can you co-sign for me? And the guy just ran our information just for S&Gs. And my dad was qualified for some absurd amount, is what they said he could do. And then I think that kind of stroked his ego, and he's like, yeah, why not? Why don't we do that?
Yeah.
Dude, we went to get beer, and we came back with
the 750.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Straight up. And what they had to go and like they not service it, but they had to inspect it and everything. And so I couldn't take it with me. I didn't even know how to ride. I'd never ridden a motorcycle.
Yeah.
Never touched. I don't know what a clutch was. I heard the word before. And so they end up delivering the bike like 2-3 days later to the place I was staying. And I always remember there was I had a buddy that I worked with. He was a cook at this restaurant. His name was Isai, a really, really badass dude. And he had just bought a Suzuki 600, same year. And he was the one that told me, like, hey, you should go look at Suzuki. I'm like, all right, cool. And he ended up telling me, or I told him, hey, I got a bike. I did the same deal as you. He's like, awesome. Do you know how to ride it? No, I'll come teach you. So we closed the restaurant down, and it's like 1 a.m. I come over to the house. My family's still awake because they know I'm going to go try to ride this bike. And he comes over, and I put all my gear on, and it's 1 o'clock in the morning. I sit out in front of the house, and I put my leg over the bike, and I'm thinking to myself, like, what the heck did I just do? Like, holy cow. And I barely touch the throttle. I was like, boom. And it just like,
it's got that electric, like, yeah.
It's electrifying is what it is. And so I go, and he says, just slowly let the clutch, or put it in gear and slowly let the clutch out, and it'll start rolling. So I'm like, all right, cool. I go put it in gear, thing stalls. I'm like, what the heck? Kickstand's down. So I'm like, all right, refocus. So I go bring the kickstand up, put it back in gear, or start the bike back up. I let the clutch out, and it starts going, and then I start to give it gas, and it gets up to like 2,000 RPM. And it idles at 1,200 RPM. And I just remember it. I was so scared of it going over like 3,000 RPM. And I ended up short shifting. Meanwhile, this thing red lines at like 14.5.
Yeah.
So I'm short shifting. I short shift all the way to fourth gear going like 26 miles an hour in the neighborhood. So it makes it just this cumbersome pig. And I remember thinking of what Ben Spees looked like in the poster, dragging knee, and then I go to turn in the first corner of the neighborhood, and it's just this heavy, like giant 50-gallon drum filling barrel, you know what I mean? And I just went to turn, and it felt so weird, and I thought to myself, what the heck did I just buy? Like, what did I get myself into? And then I did a couple laps in the neighborhood, and then eventually I went out on one of the main streets, and it's just a back road. And I was probably fourth gear going less than 20 miles an hour. Like, this thing didn't even want to be running. And I held it wide open just to see what it would do. And the airbox noise is so loud on those bikes. It's just, whoa. And I just remember as it went up to like $8,000, and I was going, well, not even $8,000, probably somewhere around there. But I just remember it accelerated so, to me at the time, intense and loud. And it was like warp speed on Star Trek. Like, everything just kind of hit as a blur. And then it was pretty overwhelming. And then I was like, well, I wonder if I did that in first gear, what that would be like. So I went and I put it in first gear, and I did that, and I actually accelerated pretty fast, and it scared the heck out of me. I was just like, holy cow. I went and brought the bike back in, put it back. And then that was the next day was Thanksgiving, and then I just started riding it everywhere, and I rode it 24/7. And then it ended up being where, at the time, you have to remember I was 18, 19 years old, and I was such a meathead, just because of, like, when you compete in wrestling, you're a gentleman off the map, but you have to have that dog in you. And you're constantly feeding it. But that comes to me at least, that came at a price. And because I was real insecure back then. So like I had to just go all in. Yeah. And because I stopped doing that, I started feeding that dog motorcycle stuff.
Okay.
You know what I mean? And so then that's what kept me busy, kept me out of trouble. And all I wanted to do was ride. So then I went to work, and then I would go ride. I'd get off work, go ride. Then I would go back to work or go to school or go whatever, and I would that's all I would do is ride, and I rode all the time. And then I think after like a month or two, I had met some people, and they mentioned this forum, and I ended up going on this forum, and they organized a ride, and then you end up networking, and we went on this road. And so in the Fresno area, there's a lot of really good roads to go ride, and they have enough traffic that it keeps the road clean, but not enough traffic to actually be traffic on the road. Mm-hmm. Like the roads get used, and they're paved really nice. So you couldn't hit a vein that's like 120 miles of twisties. Epic. Mm-hmm. Like really, really good riding. And I went on this loop with this big group, and these guys were all suited up. There's another guy had this sweet Suzuki jacket and matched his bike. Like all of the stuff that you would look back on now and be like, you would crack up at. Like at the time, that to me, like
that was
moved me. Yeah. Like I was like, wow, and I always remember this dude, Will Lakovich. He had a GSXR 600, it was like a 03. And when we took off on this group ride, he was like one of the faster guys, and he took off to the front. And I remember he had so much extra body English going into the corners, but he would haul ass, and it looked so cool. And you'd see him for 2 corners, and then he would just disappear. And I was like, damn, like it'd be cool to be like that guy one day. And I remember paying attention to him and not realizing, like I went into the corner kind of funky, and I made the first corner, which was just turn, mm-hmm. try, and then, but it set me up really bad for the next corner. I almost went off the road, and all I thought to myself was that picture of Ben Spies dragging his elbow. And I was like, well, if the bike will do that, I might as well keep leaning. And I just kept leaning, and I made the corner, mm-hmm. And then you do that a couple times, and it's kind of the new normal, okay. So to answer your question with that big ass story, it's to answer it. There was no technique, there was no coaching, no guidance. It's some dumb kid that looked at a picture of Ben Spies and thought, well, I guess I could do it too, and I did that over and over and over in all of these really dumb circumstances that I put myself in. And for whatever reason, I survived it mm-hmm. long enough to meet some other people that played a big part in keeping me safe, making sure I got the right gear, mm-hmm. and then some instruction like, hey, don't do this so much, or pay attention to this, and then learn how to maintain your bike. But those people, they all know who they are, but they all saved me, like mm-hmm. it kept me from or saved me from myself, really, because I didn't know any better. And then, but I knew I loved what I was doing, and I got deeper and deeper into it, and one thing leads to another, and we're here today at professional motorcycle races. Mm-hmm. One day things lead to another, and you get to go to what was it? I think it was Monster Cup, because Dave Cruz worked on Yoshimura Suzuki.
Oh yeah.
He was I think he was this chassis guy. Mm-hmm. So when he found out that I was all into that, we're at Monster Cup. Ben Spies at the race. I'm freaking like a schoolgirl. Can't believe it. And then I get to shake the dude's hand, man. And the guy is like even cooler in person than I ever could have imagined. Like that was there's only a couple people that I'll be that way. You know what I mean? Because that guy, it was before I even knew who or what he was. Like
he's just this guy.
But yeah, before all of that, he inspired me without knowing what he was even doing. Yeah. Just a picture of him. Mm-hmm. You know what I'm saying? And like, if you look at him back in the day, you could Google Ben Spies. That his nickname was Mr. Elbows. Mm-hmm. And especially during that time, like that wasn't a very common thing, people dragging their elbow. He was just scraping up everywhere, every turn, and he had this really beautiful, aggressive style where it was always these long, giant sweeping mm-hmm. turns. He was really big on corner speed, and he would just find every last inch of the track and just stretch it out to where he could just take these huge sweeping corners, and it was really impressive. And then when he ended up going into World Superbike in 2009, and when he did that, he took this guy, Noriyuki Haga was the factory Yamaha guy. Haga went to Ducati, and Spies took the old ride that Haga had. And Haga was one of the guys that was always right there battling in the championship, but just not quite, not quite sealing the deal. And then that was supposed to be the move that it was going to be his year. And Yamaha just came out with that new R1 back then, and it was a cross-plane motor, and so nobody knew what was going to happen. What the cross-plane motor was, it was like on the inline fours. I think the MotoGP bikes, the 4-strokes were using a cross-plane motor, but what it was is just a different firing order of the cylinders. But it's made it sound kind of like a twin, but it revs out like a regular inline four, but it has a lot more torque.
Yeah.
Like what would be a typical characteristic of a V twin.
Yeah.
So it's supposed to broaden the usable power. But it could have gone this way or that way.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And that year, they nailed it. And they got the right guy for the job, because Ben Spies went from American road racing and then went into World Superbike, set pole, like I want to say 13 rounds out of the whole series, and won at least 11 of them. I'd have to look back at the stats. But the guy that he was battling with was Noriyuki Haga the whole season, and they were the most epic, incredible battles. Like, if anybody listening to this, if you're a fan of road racing, one, you would know who Ben Spies is, but go watch any of the Assen races from that year in 2009. I want to say Assen race 2. I remember in my head, I can't call it a chicane, but there was like a left and a right where they square up next to each other, and typically you back off when you end up on the outside, because going into the next corner you're going to get your front wheel chopped. And then I remember Ben just he stuck his nose in there, and they were both laid over on each other, and it's one of the most beautiful passes you'll ever see. But it's by it's like some John Wick shit, honestly, is what that whole season was, is what it was. And he had a lot of stuff happen with him where they had bike problems. I don't know that they had engine failures, but they had significant bike problems, a few rounds. And so he had a lot of adversity that he had to either come from behind or or a really horrible start or something. But I'm trying to remember all the detail of it, but there were so many races that he would have to come from behind, and you would see Haga's like checked out, like seconds ahead of everybody, and you would see him come over the front straightaway crest all tucked in, and then you would see the mirage in the background, and you just see this dark black figure just completely, almost look like somebody going across the track, like crashing, coming out of a corner. And it was Ben taking these crazy ass lines, and then it was like you could play the Jaws music, and he was coming, and it would be with like a couple laps to go, and he would pull like a second and a half a lap out of nowhere on tires that are gone, and just make it happen, and then just make a spectacular pass and win the race.
Okay, I have something I have to ask you. So, as being someone that's been into racing since I was like the day I was born, what is it like to find something like that, motorcycling first, and then motorcycle racing, something you've never been exposed to, and then learning to appreciate all that goes into it at like 19, 20, 24, because you're not just so like, wow, that's cool. You really understand there's a big purpose to all of it that goes with it.
I think it helped me a lot. I was familiar with motorcycle racing to an extent. Like I knew who Ricky Carmichael was.
I mean, like on the road racing thing though, to understand like 14 years ago, 15 years ago now, to understand all that stuff that happened and to know like this is how this is going. That's a lot of appreciation to detail that like a lot of people still never see, and they'll watch racing their entire life. You know what I mean?
Yeah. It came from doing it though.
Yeah.
And I think that's important. You know, you have to try it yourself. Like a good example, my wife, she's only gone to pro races. Really. Like, and when I've taken her to a race, like she'll go and Eli Tomac will blow the doors off. You know what I mean? And you know what it's like standing next to a berm with him when he's on one.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like it moves you.
Yeah.
And that's all she's ever seen, right? So then when I go and it's been years since I've ridden a dirt bike and I get my dirt bike back together and I'm like, hey, I'm going to go to the track. You want to go? And she's like, yeah, sure. So she comes and then I go and I'm like rolling all the jumps because my hands are gone, 2 laps in and I'm just trying to get a feel for, I'm like 20 pounds heavier than the last time I rode my bike. So I'm trying to figure everything out. And I come in to take some water and she goes and she's like, what's wrong? Is there something wrong with the bike? Like, what are you talking about? So she's like, you're not doing any of the jumps. I'm like, gee, sorry. Like,
do you want me to make the mortgage payment?
Yeah,
like,
come out and try it then.
Yeah.
But that's the thing. Like, for someone like her, she had never done it, so she doesn't realize, like, oh, that's a lot of work goes into that, And so I think that's a number one most important thing is, like, you got to ride, or at least try to ride, just to appreciate it. It's like anything, It's just like MMA stuff. Like, it's all cool. You could say what you want. But go try and do it, and then you'll realize, like, oh, this is different.
Like this now, yeah.
Yeah, so that's what I would say for that. I rode a lot. I had a lot of seat time on street bikes, and I had a lot of great people that were around me, and a lot of guys that were exceptional riders too. Like, really, like, to this day, like, looking back at it, like, I got so lucky meeting the people that I did, because they were great teachers, but they did it the right way.
Yeah.
And that stuff carries over. Like, you go and you test that over time where you learn a technique and then you go and you try it, not try it against anybody, but you verify it with people that are doing it at a top level, and it matches up, or they could appreciate a good part of it. You know what I mean? So then that's something I lucked out. And I wasn't aware of any of that at the time. I was just kind of going by the seat of my pants.
Yeah.
And that's what, looking back, there's more to appreciate. In the moment, it was just a great time in the moment.
Yeah.
That was, what's cool about that is it allowed me to have this passion that it was like an innocent passion. Like, because I didn't know, it was naive. I didn't know any better, but I just, like, invested everything into it.
Yeah.
Like, there was times where I could spend the last dollar to my name to get to a track day just to ride. And then, like, somebody there would ask me to tow them around the track, and then they'd offer a couple bucks, for me to show them some lines or something. And I was like, oh, okay, cool. And, I'd do that. And then that got me home.
Yeah.
And it's like dumb stuff like that. And it's like, I ain't got no business training anybody. You know what I mean? But I could show you a couple lines. So, like, little things like that where you just you got what you wanted out of it, and you figured out how to make it work. And it's like I didn't really race a whole lot or anything, and when I got into moto, it was more so just to get into dirt biking. I loved motorcycles, and then I thought I had the same kind of confidence going into moto that I had with road riding until I did it. And then I realized, like, oh, this is hard. This is completely different. Like, the front end is doing its own thing, and you're supposed and you're supposed to relax, and the track's different every lap, and it was way different, which is why I appreciate coming to Supercross and Motocross so much, is because I think it's nuts. You know what I mean? The amount of fitness that you have to have just to be in shape enough to improve your outright speed and actually just get better at technique. So, like, you have to be in really good shape just to work on your craft, right? And then you have to be in better shape to go and race. You have to have all your ducks in a row. You have to have your equipment dialed in. You know what I mean? And you have to have some knowledgeable people watching you, or have some film that you can reflect back on, because the bike might feel like it's doing one thing, but the reality is it's doing another thing. And you have to be able to see that, and somebody with a knowledgeable eye needs to be able to identify that. And then that's how you're going to make tuning improvements, right? That's all just to get better. You know what I mean? And then what happens? Oh, I sprained my ankle, or I broke my wrist.
And you're back to zero a bit.
And then, and then you have to take time off, and then you're out of shape, and then you got to work at getting back in shape, and you got to do this. And to me, like, I never had that. I never had more than 6 months on a bike. So all my riding was just knowledge that I had from riding motorcycles. But, I was never a big jumper. because of it, because I was always uncomfortable jumping.
Yeah.
You know, I could corner and ride, and wheels on the ground, I could ride good, and if I was in shape, I could go good. But I was only as good as a bone stock setup on my bike with where God knows where the clickers were, where the sag was, you know what I mean? And so like I had no idea what I was doing on dirt, you know, and then I rode it until I couldn't, you know, and then life would happen, or I couldn't afford to ride it anymore, and then I'd have to stop, and then was what it was. And then so it's kind of it was the opposite of what I experienced on the street, because on the street I had a lot of people around me to help me do it the right way.
Mm-hmm. And then this one you're on your own.
On my own.
Yeah.
Just think I'm the man, though. Like I know everything. That's the problem, you know. And so then you go and start working on them. And I was a mechanic for a little while, and you know, did a bunch of things where you learn about the bikes. Like I never could afford to have the maintenance done, right? So anything that you when you have a bike long enough, you got to work on it or get work done. So I always learned because I didn't have a choice. Like, do you want to go ride? Yeah. Well, go fix this, or do a top end, or learn how to do a bottom end, or you got to learn how to do suspension. You got to do and all that stuff. So like the workmanship's all good, and then you know, you pick up stuff along the way, you know. But I think having somebody knowledgeable to teach you that can do it the right way, you know, and that almost seems rare nowadays, is a lot of people kind of hack their stuff up, and it's really tough, or they over engineer things, you know. Like it's not, motorcycles in this day and age come from the factory pretty dang good. Yeah, like it's rocket science to make a bike, but once you've made the bike, it ain't rocket science to make it go fast.
There's a reason that I have a YZ250, and that's all I want. It's because like it's been the same bike for 14 years now. You know, except for some plastic updates, and like I've heard so much about that Kayaba Triple S fork. Like that's what I'm on.
Yeah. No, and that's what's funny too. And you know what's funny too is, and a suspension guy could tell me if I'm wrong with this, but I want to say like that. I shouldn't even talk about, because I'm not even a suspension guy. I would completely, I'd butcher this. But I want to say like that fork was pretty cutting edge for its time, but it's pretty straightforward. Yeah. You know what I mean? And I don't think it's like...
It's like the same fork for the last 18 years.
You know, and so like anytime I've talked to suspension guys, they've always looked at, it's a KYB. You know what I mean? Like I never, when you talk to race guys... It's like, it's suspension is what it is. But then when you talk to on the sales side, it's like, oh, it's triple S, it's this and that. It's like all these features, you know. But I don't know enough about that. That's why I don't want to speak to it too much, because I could be overlooking something, you know. But I crack up. I used to have a YZ250. I have a YZ125. Had an identical YZ250, and then someone stole it right when I made it big and started getting all my hookups and everything.
And they got mopped.
Yeah, someone took it, man.
Out of the garage?
Yeah. I was working on some bikes for some friends, and I had my bike off to the side, locked up, and it was gone. And you know, that feeling too is like,
it's the worst.
It's like, did I leave it at my friend's, or where is it? Why is it not here? And I'm looking everywhere, and you realize it's gone.
And you realize it's gone, and then you even go back and look like, hold on, wait, it was there? Because I had camera equipment stolen from the office one time. Ooh. And I was just like, well, no, it was here yesterday. Like, this is in my office. This is the old job. Yeah. And it's not there now. And like, the bag's there, but the camera's not there. And then I parked my truck there for like a week because I went out of town, and came back, and all the wheels and tires were stolen off of it. And like, same thing. I was like looking around the truck like, well, they're going to be in the bed. Like, I'm going to look in the bed. They're going to be in the bed. Like, somebody's just screwing with me. And no, they were gone. Battery was gone. Windshield wipers were gone. The grill was gone. Yeah. That's
such a shitty reality check.
That when they, like, that theft part from you, oh my God, that's the worst.
It sucks.
Yeah, dude.
It sucks. Yeah. I'm still bitter about that, man. My garage would be complete if I had that 250. You know what I mean? Because, dude, I suck, like, to get back on the bike and then go, like, try and clear all the jumps on a 125 when you're out of shape is like, dude, like, I just want a little bit more, just a little. If I could backside stuff a little bit easier, it'd be so much more fun. You know, I gotta,
See, the 125 was the bike of choice when I was in California because
Yeah.
everything was harder based. But then where I'm at now, it's way too soft, so I had to step up to the 250.
You have to ride the hell out of them.
Yeah.
You know, but they're great. Like the bike is awesome. I'm the problem is what I'm saying. You know, the YZ250 was like the perfect power.
Oh, it's the best bike.
Yeah, I think that was perfect power. But yeah, and it's easy. Like you could work on it with confidence. You know, and pretty straightforward. And
You can always get stuff.
yeah, parts, everything, really easy. But yeah, somebody has. I guarantee, dude, whoever took that thing probably ran it with straight gas too, and just ruined it. It was all pristine. So bummed about that.
We had a XR75. That was my dad's like dream bike when he was a little kid, and then he found one like 17 years ago. And then he had these big plans that he was going to redo it and everything, but then he just kind of tucked it off to the side of the garage. And then it got stolen. Our garage got broken into, and that's one of the things that got stolen like 3 years ago. And so it's like one of those things like, even when you see like I see an XR75 now, and I'm like, I'm not even going to look at it.
Oh, that's rough.
Yeah.
Jeez.
Because I know that like, for what that was, like the person that took it, they have no idea what they took.
Yeah.
100%.
That was a big thing. So like a funny story, my 125, my boss at the time, my boss at CWS, his name was Matt Bucolica, and he taught me a lot about business. That's another perfect example of somebody who like kind of guided my trajectory. He taught me a ton about business, and he'd always have me put everything on the line. Like he had that mom and pop shop, and I wanted to work in a shop. And I remember Cycle Gear told me no. There was a guy, I can't remember his name. I wouldn't even say it if I remember it, but I went for an interview there, and I thought I was awesome, man.
Yeah.
I was like, they gotta hire me. And I went in for a job interview, and the guy, I remember his name now, but the guy told me, yeah, I don't think you're qualified for this job. And it was just a parts job. Like you read a catalog, point at some stuff. Yeah, it's sick. Here, buy
Here we
it.
go. Here's the part number.
Yeah. The dude, he was like, yeah, I don't think you're qualified for this. And I just remember I was pissed. And he had a big ego and everything. I used to stuff him at the track. But anyways, so fast forward, I end up going to this little mom and pop shop called CWS, and the guy was really rad when I met him, and he was there for my first couple track days, and I ended up being a little shop rat and go and sweep stuff up, and ended up doing tires. That was my first gig, was changing tires, and then that was really, really good. And the more tires that I got to change, the more money that I made. So then also, like, the more we sold, the more needed to be mounted, more money I would make. So I became really good at selling tires. And he was always into dirt bikes, and I never had one. I think I rode a YZ85 when I was like 20 or 22 or something, or 20, 21, somewhere around there. I rode a YZ85 once, and I remember it being like the most violent little bike I'd ever been on. And I looped it out first thing.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, looped it out immediately. And there was a guy that had picked up a bike for dirt cheap from some other guy, and it was his wife's bike is what it was. It was a YZ125, and he brought it over to the shop to show me and my boss, and he tells him, he's like, hey Matt, check this thing out. And I was eyeballing. I was like, wow, that thing's cool. And then Matt goes, he's like, you think that's a cool bike? I was like, yeah. So Matt goes, and he was like, ask him if he'll sell it. And I was like, so I asked the guy. He's like, "Oh, I don't know. I mean, I'll probably flip it. You know, it's a good deal." So then Matt goes and he says, "Hey, you know, Anthony doesn't have a bike. You know, what would you sell it to him for?" And I'm thinking to myself, like, I don't have the money for this. Like, there's no, like, what are you doing? Like, I was kind of getting upset. Like,
why are you putting me onto this now? Yeah.
Yeah, it was like I got a knot in my throat.
Yeah.
Because I was ashamed. Like, I couldn't afford it.
Yeah.
I couldn't afford it, and you're gonna get a price out of somebody that is trying.
They're gonna try to do something. And
they're
I
gonna
still
be
can't
nice,
do it.
and I can't do it. You know, and so the guy goes and he shoots him an absurdly cheap price, and Matt goes and he gets his checkbook and he writes out a check, and he hands it to me. He's like, go give that to him and make sure you sign the release of liability and put it in your name, because I don't want that shit. And now you got a piece of shit two-stroke. That's what he tells me. And I got so emotional, you know, and like I that to me, like, still to this day is one of the nicest gestures. Like I can't even, that I've never experienced nothing like that, you know, at that time. And you know, so then that's how I ended up getting into dirt bikes, was because he did that. And I still have that bike to this day. Like, I'll never sell that bike. So one that you saw on the post with the one graphics on
that's
it,
that one.
That's that bike. I keep it cherry, you know. But yeah, that was a big deal. But this, like, that's what I'm talking about. It was like things like that, from networking or just being involved with getting really lucky, being involved with good people, you know, that you learn from, and that, you know, took care of you or looked after you, you know, and that was huge.
Because, like, okay, in 2013 or 2014, I'm not riding at that point. Like, I'd ridden a little bit in California, but I kept crashing, and Don told me I needed to stop. So they kind of took bikes away from me, and I was like, well, if I don't have bikes, and I'm not really going to the races as much as I go to the races now, like, what's the point of the job? So I was kind of in this point of like, yeah, I'm probably not going to do this much longer. And so Dominic, our sales guy, they had bought a table to the AMA Hall of Fame banquet that was the same weekend as Monster Cup in Vegas. So we go to that, and he's like, oh yeah, we're doing this, like, we bought it, but I really want to see Malcolm Smith, because he's going to introduce a couple people into the Hall of Fame. So, like, we're going to go do that. You and your wife are going to come. My wife's coming. Like, we're just going to go party. It'll be a fun time. I'm like, okay, cool. So it's the night Ricky gets inducted. They have a bunch of RCs, like his 01 KX250s there. And that was like one of the first bikes that I remember being a little kid geeking out about. So that bike's there. All the new Husqvarnas are there. And I like kind of fall in love with one of those. I'm like, whoa, dude, that new two-stroke looks sick. And then as the night's going on, I'm like, man, I really gotta ride. Like, I have to go start riding again. If I don't ride, there's no point to even do this. And then Malcolm gets up there, and then him and this other guy are talking. And you see these guys that are in their 80s, and they're beat. I mean, they are. Malcolm had just had surgery. He was on a walker or something like that. The other guy was pretty old. But you saw how much they had ridden. I'm like, well, I have to ride then. Like, I have to get it going again. So that was on like a Thursday. And by the next Tuesday, I had a bike kind of sorted out through Don. Like, hey, we have to do this, or I'm not going to do this anymore. So, yeah, I get it.
That's the way to do it. You have to.
It didn't. To get on it again and then, like, get to learn everything and just do it on a 125 two-stroke was so fun, because that's all I wanted to do. That was the most easy to ride bike. It was easy to maintain. I never had to worry about anything. Like, I just did it.
What year did you start going to the pro races?
09.
For your job?
So started going as like an intern in 2009 through 2011, and then I got hired full time in October of 2011.
Okay. How much from watching the best in the world in person, how much did you take from that, and it helps your riding whenever you try to go ride?
That really only happened in the last like 4 years, because I had to not get so wound up. Like, I would just get too, when I would ride, I would get too ahead of myself and then crash, or I'd go to the races and then I have too much going on that I couldn't really pay attention. But then I would talk to Nick Way, or Nick would explain something to me, or I would see it work, and then I'm like, oh, okay. And then I started trying that. So then as I slowed down the way I thought, I got to put that stuff to use. And then that made it better. So that's really a realistic on a motorcycle thing, recent. But then there's other stuff that's happened within the pits that I'm like, okay, I need to take a bit of that and then do this every day. I need to do this way. So from watching the best motorcycle riders, that's a recent thing. But like watching the best mechanics, watching the best gym guys, like watching the best, anybody that's in a team that organizes everything, just to know that you need to have that level of balance and structure and everything. And me not thinking that I needed that was a big wake-up call. Because I never really had that. I was just like, cut loose to go do whatever I wanted all the time.
Yeah, I think if you get a pretty good flow of keeping your stuff dialed, I think that's the biggest thing. I think it's a lot of work if you're out in left field, and then
you just don't know.
You need to get it there, because the equipment's good. It doesn't take a whole lot. It's just making sure things are freshened up. They're not neglected. Your chain's adjusted. You don't have shark tooth sprockets and all that kind of stuff. And your tire pressure is good.
And like growing up as a kid, my dad didn't know that. Like we rode, but he was just like 35 pounds of air pressure in that tire, dude. You're ready to go. Let's do it.
I bet it felt great.
I didn't know any different. I'm just like, yeah. I remember we took our bikes to get like serviced one time. And I remember I was like 14. I'm like, hey man, I keep reading that everybody in the magazines keeps talking about set and sag. Like, could we set the sag? And then the guy that was at the shop was like, what do you want to set the sag for, dude? You didn't bring boots, you didn't bring gear, you didn't bring a helmet. Like, I could make you a number, but it's not we can twist the spring all you want, but it's not gonna be right. I'm like, okay. And then that's when I was like, oh, this is going this way. My brother and I, like, we would have to go to the starting line with a spark plug and a wrench in your boot, or for the other one if the bike fouled out, because you knew the bike was going to foul out. And like, we could have learned jetting, or we could just keep swapping them out, because my dad's like, I'm not learning jetting, I have money to go make, so like, try the bikes, it's fine. 32 to 1, just make it happen.
That's funny. Yeah, there is a lot of stuff that I didn't learn until going to the races, to be honest. It was with dirt stuff. There's a ton.
Oh, dude, even like tying down my bikes, Don would see me tie down my bike, and he's like, what are you doing? I had the ratchet tie downs. And he was just like, when I moved to California, what kind of four-wheeler tie downs are those? I'm like, they're freaking good ones, aren't they? And he's like, get that shit out of your truck right now. Funny. He watched me. I had a extended like bed, just single cab, but regular bed Dodge Dakota. And he watched me try to put the bike in that and figure out where I was going to do it, because I'd never loaded a motorcycle into this truck before. And I was outside the office for like 35 minutes, like crawling all over, like, okay, where do I do this? And where do I do this? Do I have to put the bike in backwards because the mounting posts are back here? And he's like, yeah, they're in the front of your bed of your truck. Every truck's like that. Did you not know that? I was like, no. And he's like, fuck, I just hired this 21-year-old and he doesn't know, like, shit. And he doesn't even know how to tie the truck down, and this is going to be my new guy. Yeah.
How did you guys meet? How'd that even start?
So back to, like, I want to do this job. I just want to go to the races my entire life. And so by the time I'm like 14, 15, 16, I know I'm not going racing. I have to go get a job to somehow go to that. And so my parents split up. I get through school. But all along the way, I'm like trying to figure out, like, okay, I'm going to try this, or I can do this, or this could be a job that I could do. You could do this. You could be an energy drink guy. You could be this guy. You could do this. And so I'm kind of getting aware of who everybody in the industry is by just kind of watching it from afar. And then the Indianapolis trade show was there. So Indy trade show was huge up until right about the time that I got into the industry. So it's 3 hours from home. I always know it's there. I always know it's this big party and that everybody goes to it. And so after I graduate high school, but while I'm like starting in college, I emailed Don and I emailed Davey Coombs, and I'm like, hey, I'd really like to do this. I just don't know how, but like, if you could explain to me how, like, I'd really appreciate just some understanding. But my last year in high school, like, I'm in remedial English because I don't apply myself. Like, I test well, but they put me in an English class where you pretty much just like fill out work forms. Like, hey, this is what you did. This is how you're going to learn to work at the mill, or you're going to work here. And they're like, so you just got to fill out these forms. Like, talk about what you would do at your job for the weekend. So I would make reports in high school. Like, I went to the Supercross race. Hey, I did this. I talked to this person. I spent this much time at this truck. This is what's going on here. This, and this. And my teachers are like, hey, what kind of job is that? I don't get it. And I'm like, well, that's what I think I'm going to do. And I remember I had a conversation with one person's parent, and they're like, so what do you think you're going to do? And I'm like, well, I'm either moving to Morgantown, West Virginia, or I'm moving to California. So it's one of the two, but I'm going. And they're like, okay, best of luck. I would go to California and not Morgantown, but you can figure this one out on your own. I'm like, okay. So Indy Trade Show comes up. I worked at Abercrombie at the kids store. I like worked in the stock room. So I do that, and I have everything dialed. So I have money on the side, but I've never been to anything. The only person I've ever talked to in the industry is Malcolm McCassie, and that was just like by sheer coincidence at an event. So I go to the Indy trade show. Because my dad has a used car dealership, I apply for like a dealership pass because I want to start importing pit bikes, and that was like legit. I was like, look, I'll import pit bikes. Like, how hard could it be? I'd love to ride pit bikes. But within going, I knew I needed to either meet Don or meet Davey to get it going. So I made these like really, really dorky binders with like photos of my brother riding, and then like me saying like, hey man, I've been into racing all my life and this and this, and just kind of explaining who I am and like what I want to do. But because I had been emailing Don a couple times and he hadn't replied, I was like, well fuck, I gotta just meet him. So luckily within the first 3 hours of being there, I bumped into him, and he's like, oh yeah, I've got your emails. And I'm like, cool. But I guess the way I approached him was hilarious because it's just so bashful and like just naive in a way, but like so different than everybody else in California that was there. So then he takes a chance on me. Like a month later, he gets me a press pass to go to the Indy Supercross, and then I have to write the race report and see everything that happens. And then I start going to more and more races. I'll go to like St. Louis Supercross. They offered me a press pass to go to the Vegas Supercross in 2009, and that's like Chad Stu, like neck and neck. So we have to go. Like me, my mom, my brother, my grandma all go on vacation so I can go do the job, but get in to like try to keep doing it. So like at that point, I've only known them 4 months. We get there, Don hands me a magazine, and it says like editorial intern Michael Antonovich on the masthead, and I just like lose it. Because I'm like, oh my God, I made it. Like 4 months and I already did it.
Intern.
Yeah. Lost my mind.
Yeah.
So I'm intern for like a year and a half, but it's not through my college. It's just through me and Don. And then like we go through the highs and lows. Like I make mistakes. He has to let me go. He needs me again. He brings me back. And then in 2011, he's like, hey, it's finally time that we could hire you. We have a position coming. You're going to be 21. You have to move to California. Can you come do this? I'm like, I think so. So then they fly me to California in June. We do the interview. And then I have to wait until August for a follow-up interview. And then that's when they tell me they're going to hire me. So it's been 14 years with Don. It's been the best because, like, hell, that's almost half my adult life. You know, like half my entire life. But, yeah, he just took a chance on me. Like, he had no need to take a chance on me and did.
I think that enthusiasm and I don't know if you call it perseverance or dedication or something, but the enthusiasm to keep going after it.
See, it's weird because, like, as I've gotten older, I understand, like, it's very rare for that to happen.
Yeah.
But then when I go to the races every weekend, I'm surrounded by all these people that it's just as rare for them to get what they have, and they were just as willing, dedicated to make it happen. So that's almost comforting every Saturday. I'm like, I'm surrounded by all these people that get it. That's it.
100%. When I talked to Wygant for a bit, and that was a big thing that he's always made a point to point out. It like how many people do what you do, mm-hmm. how many people do what he does, how many people do what I do, and then if you look at how each one of us got there, it was not the same story, but a very similar story, and that goes a long way, even with upper management, with a lot of the manufacturers, at least in racing. You know, there's a lot of the same type of path, the same type of desire and enthusiasm. Either you were the guy or you learn to help the guy mm-hmm. be the guy. You know, you support him, because these teams, they take a lot of, the whole machine takes a lot of different parts lot of moving parts, a lot of different gears and little mechanisms to keep rolling. You know what I mean? And it's been rolling long before we were a part of it, and it'll be rolling long after we're a part of it. But for us to be able to make a small impact or contribute to it, to me, that's a pretty rad thing to be able to do. You know, the other side of that, or not the other side, but the other part to that is because there's so many of these similar stories, I think it's important for people to be aware of that, because people listening could look at that like, how do I get in the industry? Like if I was to listen to two guys that are in the industry and they talk about how they got in, I'd be taking notes, right?
Yeah.
It's not magic. It's not some spectacular story. It's
just perseverance.
Yeah, it's literally you have to want to do it.
it.
There's a lot of Thanksgiving dinners you're going to go to where people are going to, and your family are going to ask you, hey, when are you going to get a real job?
Oh, dude, my dad still asks me.
Yeah, you know, like that's a real thing. I don't have a real job yet.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like,
me and someone else today even had this talk of like, okay, I'll be 33 next month. I'm at the age where when I got hired at Transworld, all the guys that taught me everything in those years that I was there were at. And when I looked at them, I'm like, yo, fuck, they're in their early 30s. They're adults. They're this, they're that. And then now I'm that. And so it's interesting to see you become that part of it. And then, okay, where does it go from here? Who's the next guy coming up? How do you help them? Am I hitting this next stage? And then we had this talk today of like, okay, I'm at this. This is what I am now. I'm 33. It's not like I'm going to become the Maytag repairman in the next chapter. Like,
yeah,
this is pretty much it. Like, I pretty much got this, and I love it. There's nothing else I'd want to do. But it's that realization of like, oh yeah, you're doing this like all the time. This is everything you do. If you didn't travel on Fridays through Sundays or whatever it is, you have a big hole in your life that you're going to have to try to fill because you've done it for so long now. Even if you did it for 2 years, it's a big adjustment to stepping back into 9 to 5, staying home every Saturday.
How big of an impact is it starting a family?
That's huge. And because, how do I put this? Being away, like there will come a point in time on a Saturday afternoon at Supercross where I'm like, yo, get this shit going. Like, they did it. They figured out the track. All these people are here. Let's run this race so we can all get on the fucking plane and go home. Because you all want to go home, and I'm ready to go home too. I look at how much time I dedicated when I lived in California, when all I had to do was worry about the magazine or the website. And I really miss it sometimes because, like, I could just give everything to it. And now I can't because I'm giving so much to everybody else, to someone else, and that's even more important. But I had a friend tell me, like, oh, yeah, you'll remember, like, what did you do with all your free time before you had the kid? And now I'm like, oh, I'm at that point now. But it's totally a good thing. It just makes it appreciate it more. So we went to Vegas 2 weeks ago. And so we get to go see two of our best friends get married. It's two people that I never would know if it wasn't for motorcycle racing. This, and this. But even to, like, the view of the hotel room that we had, I'm like, yeah, all the work that I've done to get to this point in my life, like, has made this happen. And if I was 16 years old, this is the exact view, the exact hotel that I'd want to be in this exact scenario. So appreciate that shit when you get to it rather than just blow by it to get to the next thing. And that's kind of where I'm at right now. Like, I've waited 17 years to be a dad, realistically, and I'm going to enjoy every minute of it that I can.
That's huge.
Because, like, I tell him all the time, like, he's 1 in 3 months, so he hears it, but he doesn't get it, but, like, it's all for him. Like, all of this that I'm doing is, I hope one day he sees, like, oh, yo, my dad's got a cool job. I'd like to go to the races with him. Like, what Weege has when I see him with Lane is so cool.
That's so cool. It pumps me up to see that guy.
Mm-hmm.
That guy.
That dude is badass.
That guy is busy.
Mm-hmm.
The fact that he even took the time to hang out with me for a little bit was like, listen, if you can't, I get it. He's like, no, all good. Let's go. It was just like, holy cow. The guy's a machine.
He's one of them that I see right now, even where I'm like, okay, that's 7-10 years down the line.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, just take notes of it because that's what you're going to have. It's not going to be the exact same, but at least take notes of what's going on. So when it does happen to you, it's not a complete surprise.
Yeah, he's good too. That's the thing. Like,
he's good in everything.
Yeah, there's just I couldn't pick a thing about him that I would.
The thing that really like drove it home to me is like, okay, he does the TV, he does this, he does that. It's the fact that two big brands, competing brands, still love him enough to make them their official spokesperson when it's time to have an event.
Yeah.
That's huge. Like the fact that KTM and Yamaha are both like, oh yeah, no, you ready? Get the shirt on. Get up here and introduce us. We love you. Go do it.
Yeah.
That's huge.
And that's just part of what he does. That's one of the dozens of things that guy does.
There's some people that's their full-time job.
Exactly. And that's what I'm saying. The different disciplines. He's done road racing. He's done NASCAR. He's done American flat track. He's so many different things. And then also like what you're talking about with the PR stuff for manufacturers. The dude's wide open.
He and I had a really good talk at like Tampa. We coincidentally showed up at the same spot to go to breakfast. And we just started talking. He was asking me what it was like to raise the kid. And I was telling him, I'm like, yo, I'm kind of going through this, but it's fine. I understand. And just to hear like, oh, no, dude, that's how it's going to be. But you're fine. Like, don't worry about it. And he could totally have any reason to just be like, oh, that's your problem, dude. But he gets it. Like,
super helpful.
We just, to race with this kid at the KTM thing, like, that's awesome. Just to see every little step of the way, like, he's definitely doing what everybody wants to be doing. So it's cool to see Jason, and he's totally earned it.
Yeah. No, I'm pumped for that guy. I every time that guy, I don't know that they're tossing him a bone or they need a guy to kill it or both, but he's always down for it and gets after it and like. It's rad. It's rad to be around that guy and see what he does, and then it's cool because you hear a lot of the guys that work with him, and there's a perception that you have from the outside, just like with anything else. But then when you actually sit down to go do it, and then the guys that work with him are like, "Dude, he's good. Like he's really good." You know, that I respect that a lot.
Honestly, of all the stuff at RacerX, that's the one thing that I envy. It's not the print or it's this or it's that. It's just that staff that they have and that. They have Ouijas. They're like, we have Don, and Don's good, and I know I'm good because I'm in a lower status of Ouija. But like Jason gets it, you know, he has a bunch of people that he gets to help guide into the next step because like Kellen and Mitch are gonna kill it the same way that Chase Stallo. Dude, Chase Stallo and I was just butting heads all the time because like if I would post something, he would post it. If he posted it, I would post it. So it was this constant race, and so that was a big element that made the Transworld Racer X stuff fun years ago, and now I don't feel like I have that right now because I have other shit that I'm responsible for. But then to see like Mitch, Kellen, Tom, everybody else that gets to work with Ouija and gets better because of everything Jason's seen in the last 15 years, you're like, oh yeah, there's a lot of people that are getting a master's program over there in media, and it's just a day-by-day thing. Yeah,
it was pretty cool. How cool was it when he was it Denver where his boy went and did that race and sent the wall jump?
Because I didn't know his kid was like that. Like I've seen Wayne ride a couple times.
He didn't either. That was the funny part when you hear him talk about that. He's like, "Oh, well, I guess he hit it." Like,
well, I've seen videos that they've posted like weed shows where they're in the backyard in the subdivision, and the kid is just ripping that little electric Honda around. I'm like, wow, dude, Lane's riding every day. Good for Lane, because 3 years ago that wasn't happening.
Yeah. That's cool, man. I think about that. If I ever have kids one day, it'd be cool to bring them and have them just at least see it. You know,
we took so Ezra went to Ironman last year. He went to Motocross Nations, and then he went to Supercross at Indy. And so like 3 races that I know he is going to have no memory of, but just the memories that I got to have. Like I got to hold him for a photo on the starting line at Redbud. Like that's huge. We were walking through. Megan had like a wristband so she could go into the stadium and go everywhere that she needed to. And then Adam was riding his scooter to the starting line, whipped the scooter back, came down and like gave my kid knucks, and then kept going again. And I'm like, that's tight. Like all that little stuff is fun because same thing that we said earlier. I hope that he sees how fun it is one day, even if he doesn't want to race or ride or whatever. Just come to it just to see, like, hey, man, this is a cool little event that you get to go do on Saturdays.
And even the people, though, like the
just
whole,
to go
like,
hang out,
dude,
yeah.
at the track, it's like, I'm not on a team that's really competing against, I mean, we do have competition, but we help so many different race efforts that I get to be a part of a lot of it.
Yeah.
Even if it's a small part, it's still a significant part. But you get to be a part of a lot of it, and you get to know all these guys, and it is a big family. We were just talking about it before we started recording. Like, dude, you see a lot of these people more than you see your own family sometimes, you know, and it's like that season after season, and we spend so much time together, you know, and there's a lot of camaraderie and there's a lot of love going around. You know what I mean? And you want to see people do well. That's a big thing. Here's a good example. Today, Southwick, right? Hunter had a DNF, right? That sucks for Hunter. Big time. I was more bummed for Cam.
Yeah.
Bummed for Cam.
Because he's going to take that one super personal.
Well, I mean, it's regardless, it's just like, he's a rad dude. Yeah. You know, you don't want to see want to see anybody have a bad day, you know, and like it's tough because at the end of the day, you know, there has to be a winner and there has to be everybody else, you know, or like another thing today, you know, Jet killed it obviously again, you know, and then watching Chase is trying to regroup and the kid's not coming back to take second place. Yeah. You know, and so, and he's Chase is a champion. You know, Jet is a champion. And then to see two champions go at it like that, you know, it's tough to watch sometimes when you care about the guy. You know, you want to see them do well. Like, comes from a good family. They're both good families. Like, you're pumped for Jet. Like, how could you not be? Like, the kid's rad. Like, one of the coolest guys to come in. And then, you know, it's just like, damn. Like, that's the beautiful thing about watching the races is it can go any way. It can seem like it's wrapped up. And then at the last minute go a different direction. Like, that's racing, you know, and you don't know what's going to happen. You can guess, you could bet what you think is going to happen. It might not though. Try and bet on a whole shot. You know what I mean? Like, there's so many things that happen and there's so many variables. And with the bikes getting as good as they are nowadays, you don't see as many DNFs, but they still happen. Yeah. You know, and so there's like, oh yeah, I forgot, you know, this is a sand track. Like, totally things can overheat, you know, or whatever. And it's just, that I think that part, being in it like that, it makes it a lot more special because when you don't have the opportunity to be there, you're missing a lot of the context. It's like if you ever listen to your favorite song, like if you like a rock band or whoever, and you listen to your favorite song with a pair of headphones, and then you go see that performed live by the actual artist right in front of you. Just the sound, how full it sounds, the production, the emotion that's coming out, the performance, everything. There's so many elements that get left out from not being there live. Yeah. Does that make sense?
Oh, no, totally.
And so when you go to even if you go to one Supercross or one motocross, but when you go there and you actually see the guy, the camera's not rolling on him. He's just there by himself, or you go and you talk to him before the race, you know, and he stops. Like today, I was Jalik's big into, or pretty big fan of UFC. I love the UFC, so I'm always watching all fights. So anybody that's into it, I'm like, do we just become best friends? You know, I want to go geek out with him. With Jalik, I go. There's a big fight card on tonight. And so we're talking about, you know, who's going to win this and that. And some little kid walks up and excuse me, Jalik, and asks him for his autograph. And then the kid didn't have a Sharpie. So Jalik stops what he's doing and grabs his Sharpie and grabs one from the truck and goes and gives the kid an autograph. And it's just like, the dude's rad. Like, he's a really cool dude. like really, really nice guy. And the same thing, Brock Tickle, he's talking, and then kid comes up and Brock puts his food down, goes inside the Cali rig, finds a Sharpie, comes out, takes a picture with the kid. It's like, you never know what that means to them. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? And then if for somebody who got to meet Jalik in the pit, and then he goes and has a pretty decent ride, you feel, you almost feel like, mm-hmm. you're a little bit of a part of that. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? And like, that's the type of stuff that is pretty cool with our sport, is if you go to a race, you have opportunity to experience that. Mm-hmm. And that's what's really cool, when you have people that keep coming back to their same local race. You have the same fans, repeat fans, and then you see kids grow up, they get older, or Dude, you keep in touch.
I have that with a couple groups of fans. Like, even there's two brothers and their father that come to Southwick, Buds, and Unadilla, and so I see them a couple times a year. But I'm thinking about it today. I've seen these boys grow up. I have photos with these boys that are teenagers growing up, and I'm like, wow, they've done it right in front of me. And so to come see these guys every summer, you just know in July they're going to be at Southwick. Like, I get it. When I was a little kid, we would always go to sprint car races. And so I'm like 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. We have every sprint car t-shirt, every toy, everything. And the cool thing about those races is after it's over, you can go into the pits all night, hang out. The drivers are there just chilling out by their cars. You can get right next to this car. You can buy t-shirts from the whole bit. And so there's all these photos of me at like 3, 4, 5 with Steve Kinzer, Sammy Swindell, but there's one guy, Jack Hodenshield, who was like our guy. And I'm 33 now. His son Sheldon is one of the top guys in the sport, and I'm tight with Sheldon. And I can think like, wow, I have photos of me and your dad when I just knew your dad as a super fan, and I get to like talk to your dad now. Like, that's tight. And you see how all this stuff goes. I had this thought last year when it was Jack's last season as a racer, like, take the photos with them. Like, for all of these guys, stop and take the photo with them, because you don't know how happy some 5, 6, 7, 12-year-old kid's going to be, because they think about you all the time. They're so impressed with what you're doing, how you do it, the way you go about it, the shit you wear. Like, they're so into it, and 35 seconds makes a world of a difference.
Yeah. Yeah, you have to be. Sometimes, to me, too, that it's almost refreshing mm-hmm. to have that, especially Supercrosses. There's so much in the foot traffic in the crowd, in the pits. And we get our busy time. We'll do, probably crank out a good 10 to 12 tires an hour, mm-hmm. Per guy, I want to say. And when you're moving, you're moving. We have to do a good job. We can't make any mistakes, mm-hmm. and we have to do it perfect every single time. Friday or Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and then the next week, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and do that for, now it's like 33 weeks. Mm-hmm. You have to do that 33 weeks in a row. Mm-hmm. You have to do it perfectly. Mm-hmm. If you tweak your elbow, if you strain your bicep, if you pop your shoulder, and it sounds silly, but if you do something like that, you have a nagging injury mm-hmm. and you're flying from location to location, so your body's not recovering right. It's what a lot of people don't realize with like jet lag. Jet lag's not just going from time zone to time zone. Like, whatever happens getting pressurized in a plane and being up at altitude, and I don't know if
3 hours of not moving.
Yeah, I don't know if the radiation's a thing up there, or there's so many things. I'm not a scientist or a doctor, but I will tell you it changes things in your body doing it every single week. Mm-hmm. And if you don't take care of yourself, you're going to start developing little problems that are going to be nagging injuries down the line. And mm-hmm. it sounds silly for me just changing tires, but that's a thing, and that's why you have guys like Marshall, who's done it forever, and for him to still do it the way that he does, like, it's impressive as hell. Like, that guy's in his 60s, and he's still getting after it, mm-hmm. And does a great job. Same with Brian. Brian's
an animal.
He's a different thing. Like, that's not even human. That's like Chuck Norris of tire fitment and technical stuff. But yeah, he's Yeah, I don't even compare myself to him. That guy's on another level. But,
See, that's how, for the photo guys, that's how Garth is.
Yeah.
You know, because G's been around forever doing this, and he did it at a magazine, and he's done it as, you know, an independent agency now with Ryan, and all these other things that are going on. Garth skateboards, Garth used to moto, he's 6 foot whatever, and he's in his 40s, but he's still young enough because he's been doing it for this long. He knows how to take care of himself. He, you know, does yoga, does this, does that, is mentally clear enough to, like, be excited to go to the races every weekend. And, like, same thing. It took me, you know, I think how everybody goes through it in their 20s is you try to figure out, how am I going to do this? Are you going to go party? Are you going to this? Is this going to be your weekend on the road? Are you going to the hotel? What are you going to do?
You all business this weekend? Or are you hanging out?
And as you try to figure that out, it's a lot of, like, growing pains, and everybody's going to go through it.
Yeah.
But until you, like, finally settle in of, like, oh, wow, dude, I have to do this because if I'm going to do this as a career, I need to make the smarter decisions for me that are going to keep me from being beat to shit 15 weekends into it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Little stuff, like me and Emery have talked about it before, to just know the way to get through the airport, to get through the rental car thing, just
efficiency.
Just to how to do it, and to not be there and showing up like it's your first time every weekend.
Think about if you spend 20 minutes at baggage claim. Say you have a check bag, right? Mm-hmm. You spend 20 minutes at baggage claim. That's when you get there. That's when you leave, right? So it's 40 minutes every weekend. Mm-hmm. Then you times that by 30, and then you times that by however many years you do, and then how many hours of your life you spend.
I like
that baggage claim. How terrible that is.
So, like, you do it, like, you do it every week. Before you know it, it's Thursday. You got to start packing.
Yeah.
Or it's Friday and you're back on the, you know, you're doing whatever. But then, like, I'll get in my head of, like, oh man, if I park here, it's going to be a little bit cheaper. So then this is going to be easier. But then I'm like, no, it's going to take 15 more minutes for the shuttle to come. And then you got to tip the driver sometimes. And then you this and then you that. So then it does get more expensive. Once you just figure out how to do it, it's just like leave the settings and just run it.
You're supposed to tip the shuttle driver?
Sometimes, yeah.
Oh, dude. I'm terrible. So
it's hit and miss. It's hit and miss. Yeah.
Back to what I was talking about, though. We get moving when we have a little rush during, during the pit party, and a lot of times I'm always surprised how many people stop to watch us change tires.
Oh, dude, I'm mesmerized watching you guys change tires.
Hey, it trips me out, but one thing that's always, it's really refreshing because it's like we'll sit there and grind it out. Like if you go on a Friday, like we start early in the morning and we do not stop until we are done. And done is like, so say if we get there, at 8 o'clock and we just start grinding, usually by 9, we're already like busy. And it'll maintain all the way up until 5 o'clock. Mm-hmm. And just busy. And you're changing a ton of tires. I mean, if anybody's ever changed their dirt bike tire, they know what it is. And imagine doing that 50 times in one day. Mm-hmm. You know, that's what you got to do. And so then when you get to race day and then you have your small rushes, when people come and they're watching, they're just kind of blown away. And it's just like, oh yeah, I forgot. I guess I am kind of good at this.
Mm-hmm. It's the 10,000 hours thing.
Yeah. And then, but what's cool is I always try to treat people like it's my first time hearing anything that they've said, mm-hmm. you know, when they come up to the truck, and I try to keep the same kind of enthusiasm, just because I don't know who I'm talking to.
Yeah.
You know, I don't know if there's somebody that's interested. Well, obviously they're interested or they're checking it out, you know, but it's, they should feel cool about being there. You know, yeah. They're interested in looking. It should be a little bit engaging for them. You know, I'm not stopping what I'm doing, but to take the time, somebody's got a question, or if they're like, hey, how do you do this? Or, you know, and help them out. And like, you know, I think sometimes if you could just like pass a small thing on that'll make somebody else's life easier, or it'll pump them up, or they'll remember. And this has happened a lot where there's people that remembered I showed them something, or maybe I had an extra bead buddy, mm-hmm. you know, that holds it's a little tool we use to hold the bead down, makes changing tires way easier. But I have an extra one, I'll give it to somebody or something like that. And, mm-hmm. you know, and just totally makes their day. And then you see them the next year and they're like, hey, remember when you gave me that? Yeah. like, I still use it. Man, thank you so much. I think about you every time I change it. Like, that's cool.
That's tight.
You know what I mean? It's like, I know I'm there to change tires, but like if you could make a small little impact, that's pretty cool.
There's we all go through it, but like just the perspective thing on like where you're at, what you're doing, what it looks like to somebody else. You know, I go to, if everything goes right, and it hasn't in the last couple of years because like life happens, but I should go to every single race. Like no questions asked, I should be there. You see it, like, it's still super exciting to watch every mechanic, to watch you guys bust rubbers down. Like, I stood and watched Brian change a 5-minute tire the other day with my camera on, just running, because I wanted to watch Brian do it so I could watch it back again because it's entertaining. Like,
it was 5 minutes?
5 minutes.
He was cruising then, man. He must have been taking a break.
This was just putting it back on. This wasn't off and on. This is just install.
Yeah, he's taking his time, but I gotta let him know. Like, hey,
So-
time in you.
So like I see it so often, and there are some weekends where I'm like, I can't wait to watch, Zimmerman like spin the T handles, and there's other weekends where I saw that, like, don't care, and it's not that I don't care, but it's like, look, my thought is somewhere else today. And so it's really, really nice when I have a lot of, like, when we see fans come up and they get what we do, because what we do now is completely different than what we used to do. To have to start at ground zero again, reintroduce people to what we're doing, have to redistribute content, rethink how we're going to do content, which is really frustrating because, like, sometimes I think about an idea that I saw 15 years ago and I'm like, whoa, it's the first time I've thought of that. And it's like, no, dude, you're just doing the same shit. It's just stay in it, just keep doing it out of consistency, and it's going to work, instead of just trying to get spun out in what's not working. But to go to the races every weekend, it's just a routine. When a fan comes and they're super excited, and then that makes me think like, oh yeah, dude, like, they're seeing this for the first time this year. This is really, really cool to them. Even if one of my coworkers goes that doesn't get to go to the races every year, and they see it, and they'll tell me like this, and this, or did you see this, or did you see that? Just that little bit of, oh yeah, this is how this is. This is why I want to be here every Saturday.
Yeah.
When I have to watch on TV, and like, it's not a knock against the broadcast or anything like that, but they can only fit so much in, and I know there's battles that are happening from like third to 40th.
I'm not jealous.
And that's the
of
hardest
that.
part.
Yeah, I'm not jealous of that job at all. Yeah.
Yeah. But like that kind of stuff, it's just so fun to be at the races and see it, because every Saturday we get to experience that little circus act that goes on.
How many times are we watching we pass by each other watching a main or something,
and we talk about what we saw,
and they're just like, dude, did you see, like, Dino and Josh Hill are battling to the death. That was Atlanta this year.
Yeah,
that was a hell of a race, and it's I feel so bad for you people listening. There's a lot of battles that happen on the track
that they never see,
that
they'll never know about.
Yeah, they don't make it like Michael's saying, you could only put so much in you only have one TV screen, really, and a lot of times you'll get to where there's just some guys get clustered up every once in a while, and they just fight to the death all the way to the finish line, and it's awesome, and it's a battle for like 8th place or 6th place or something, and you'll see, and it's cool when you see like a guy, when you see Josh and Dean, like, it's good because you see like Dean's still trying to get his groove back sometimes, you know what I mean, and Josh, whether it would be, fitness to push all the way through or whatever it was that he's working on, and you see both of them holding themselves accountable, and then they're not giving each other an inch, and those are two guys that get along well. They're not gonna take each other out or anything, but they're not gonna give an inch, and to see them go at it was so cool. And
then to watch it, because it's two totally different riding styles too.
Yes.
So even you're seeing like two different ways to skin a cat, and you're trying to, okay, this is what, that's the stuff that really gets me lost in it, is just, okay, they did it this way this time, how are they going to do it the next time? Davey stopped me today. We were watching 450 Moto 2, and I saw Jet do it one time. He just doubled these braking bumps and ripped around the corner and probably put a second on everybody in one section, because everybody else was just charging through and then getting bucked up, and then it's over. And like Davey came over to me. He's like, "Did you see him do that?" I'm like, "I've been waiting for him to do it for the last 2 laps because it was so cool. I saw him do it the first time." Like that's the stuff that I always want to see. Okay. Where were you at when they did the national anthem today?
I was standing next to the starting line. I was just to the left of it.
Okay.
You know where the shaded part was? I was standing right there in the shade.
So think about how many races you've been to and even how the morning was going. Like, you get through practice, you get through that. Oh, okay, they're doing the national anthem again. It's whatever. How much did that energy, like, when the flyover happened? Did you feel it just ratchet up? Like, everybody cheered?
I had chills and, yeah.
And at that moment, I was like, oh, we're going racing now. It's on now.
American. That fired me up.
Because even up to it, I was like, all right, dude, just another Southwick. Like, let's get it going. Like, they're loading them up. Yeah. And then that happened, and I'm like, oh, yeah, it's Southwick. It's time now. Yeah.
And they're badass, dude. Like, what is it in Thunder Valley? They do the prop planes that come by, which are pretty cool. And then, but when you have jets, jets are badass.
I was like waiting for them. I'm like, all right, they coming?
I didn't know I forgot that they were gonna do that. Do they do that because it's the American Legion there, or
I don't know,
or they're just badass like that? I don't know.
I think that they do it at Bud's too, don't they?
I can't recall, man.
But
Southwick's a badass race.
This is such a good one.
The local crowd is so, like, I would say it's probably the most diehard
very
for
knowledgeable
their guys. Like, it's like Canning killed it today, Dakota's killed it today. Back when Dowd used to do it, you know, it was always epic. But they always have their local guys will always qualify well, and then but they're just like the amount of enthusiasm from every fan. They all have like that big giant family energy. Like there was buddy, you know.
Oh, dude,
like,
the shirts that they all wear.
Yeah,
we're talking Southwick shirts back to like '96.
Yeah.
And they know, dude. They know. Like if you ask them a question, they could tell you exactly what happened. They race there, so they have a really, really particular attraction to that track. Because there's other places that we go that they don't get to ride as often, you know. Think about how Fox Raceway is. Everybody gets to ride Fox Raceway all the time, but that's not looked at as like, I can't wait to get there like it is here.
Yeah, it's cool. And it just like I remember I took a trip with Rarick, and we went to, it was for Keith Clickstein's wedding, Jimmy's mechanic. Yeah. And we drove from North Carolina to Maine. But when we were passing through, we stopped in Albany and caught up with a bunch of his childhood friends, and basically his family. And how tight knit everybody is blows me away. Yeah, like I have a couple friends, like a couple childhood friends that I keep in contact with, and when you go and you see like how they are, like the story with Jimmy and Keith and Seth and Tim J and Jack and everybody over there, like the Doodles, they have this whole huge crew of just like family, but and everybody knows each other. And this guy raced this guy, and then Seth was real tight with Sheik for a while, and it just like the way that the stories go and the way that like how intertwined the network is, it's amazing. And then I meet kids that are from New York area or upstate New York or New England area, and they all look up to say like a Seth or Jimmy, and it's like you have these next generations, you know, and it's always refreshing to come up to this neck of the woods because it's just like a very warm, very welcoming crew, you know what I mean? High Point's like that too. High Point's got a good crowd. Yeah, I like that crowd a lot. That's
it's like a genuine appreciation. They've been to it a bunch of times. They've been there in the mud with you. Yeah,
but they party, but they want it's the enthusiasm that everybody's celebrating together. Yeah, you know what it means. There's other rounds that you go to that they get belligerent and it gets a little rough. Which I mean, hey, it is what it is, you know. But yeah, High Point's another round. Dilla's another one.
Unadilla is probably on this one and Unadilla are probably my two favorite ones. Like to go to and be as spectator that gets to watch and work and all that, just because when you pull up to those gates, like, you know it's going down there, you know it's going to be cool, you know anything can happen those days, and it's fun to come to this one and Unadilla because it's just completely different than everything else. Dude, even going to High Point to think about how you have to get up that road, and then you're just like, yeah, you had to do it to get there, and now you're here, and it's awesome.
Yeah, I always get scared that someone's gonna be cycling down or bomb a corner or something.
Do they fly down that road?
Yeah, they're crazy. They're crazy. Then Washougal the other one too. That's like no other track.
Yeah,
the trees and everything.
The Washougal one, especially when you drive up the big hill, it just feels like you're going into like a festival.
Do you remember? I think it was last year. Might have been last. It was. I think it said Kitchen Country everywhere. All the signs. I was bummed. I think he was hurt last year. He didn't get to race. He got hurt like the week before. I'd like to see that kid do good. He's a rad dude.
Yeah.
But no, they have that, and then Ludoville. He's a local out there, dude. Badass guy. But yeah, they're just that whole crew up there's really, really rad too. You could go down most of the tracks. You go to it's pretty cool. Yeah, there's always something special to take from everything.
Yeah,
I think they look forward to seeing. That's another thing. Like when you go round around and there's people that you look forward to seeing. You know, make a lot of memories like that.
Even okay, like where we're at, everybody stays on the same road, across the street from the airport here, and all the same hotels, and then everybody goes to the same restaurants to go to dinner at some of them, and that's cool because you know those people are expecting us to come. They put "Welcome Pro Motocross" on the sign on the front, like little stuff like that, where you know
that goes a long way.
It goes a long way that they're interested in it, and like this thing isn't just stopping here for the weekend and only a couple hundred people are going to come. The community remembers when it's going to come through.
Yeah, that's rad, sir. It's been an hour and 45 minutes.
Has it? What time is it?
Late. Don't even tell me.
Oh, it's not that bad.
It's not that bad. Oh, yeah. Only got to fly out in a few hours.
Hey, what time is your flight?
Early. I think we could probably leave it right there, sir.
We can do it again another time, too.
We can. I'm going to rack up some more. Get better at this.
Yeah.
Thank you for
I'll
taking
have my
the
breathing
time.
under control the next time.
Yeah, you don't have to hold your breath.
Yeah, I know, dude. Dude, this is a 15-year problem where I just like... yeah.
I know. I do the same thing. I'm learning. Be patient, folks. I'm doing my best and will continue to do my best.
Cool.
But we'll get better and better.
Thanks for coming over, Anthony.
Yeah, dude, I appreciate it.